Today we'll talk about the measurements where you should position your light to get a professional looking portrait for your clients. Many of you were asking if there is a rule to determine the distance for your light from the subject, what is the optimal height and angle to position your light modifier, what is the optimal distance to keep between your camera and your subject to achieve the best perspective. And of course, above all, it is very important for you to master one light portrait because it's the foundation to learn lighting. We'll go over all these fundamentals and we'll take some nice portraits applying these principles, and hopefully it will help you to improve your lighting techniques. For this photo shoot, I'm using one light and one reflector because it's the most common scenario for people starting out. My camera, it is the Canon R5 with an 85mm and 35mm lens. The speed light is the Godox V1 Pro, and my softbox is the Glow 24 by 36 inch rectangle softbox. I like to use this 24 by 36 inch box because I can use it on a vertical and a horizontal position, and it helps to illuminate the portrait a little bit better, especially for a 3/4 look, which we're going to try to do today. Now let's talk about the distance. It is widely agreed that the best distance of your modifier from your subject, it should be 1.4 to 2 times of the modifier diameter. The modifier can be square, rectangle, octagon, it doesn't matter. I have a 24 by 36 inch softbox, and because I use it with the 24 inches side up, I will consider this 24 inch modifier. And for the optimal distance of my modifier from subject will be 36 inches to 48 inches. At this distance, the light are going to still fall off enough to create depth and dimension and a nice gradient of light and shadow, but it doesn't fall off so quickly that the shadow side of the face is getting too dark. Now, on the far side, of course, you're going to get it dark because the light will not going to reach. After positioning your light 1.4 to 2 times diameter's length from your subject, you have to adjust the height of the light modifier. And the best height is to have the lower third of the diffuser of the softbox below the eye level of your subject. And imagine you divide your modifier in 3 parts, and the lower third should be below the eye level of your subject. When you have the light modifier at the desired height, to make sure that the lower third is below the eye level of your subject, you should angle the light maybe like 30 degrees to have more directional light coming on your subject. And this will help for the shadows to fall back. It creates, a little bit different gradient from up down. It is the most common scenario to have in the real life, the light coming from above. And you have to find the right angle from your subject for your light. You have to start with 45 degrees. Imagine, your subject looks straight to the camera. You start with 45 degrees from your subject, and you play in this quadrant here from 40 to 60 degrees. You have to move it a little bit to make sure that you create these nice gradients on your subject face. And it's very important as photographer to recognize this nice light wrapping around the face of your subject, and you gotta recognize when it looks good, because everybody's anatomy and everybody's face anatomy is different, and you have to find the proper angle depending on the person you photograph. But with the basic setup, you already have a very good and strong start. This will create a very nice light wraparound the face of your subject. You have a nice height and a nice fall off of the shadows from up down. And from 45 to 60 degrees from your subject, this is a very good starting point for any kind of portraits. Of course, we're going to use the reflector too, but we're going to go over the position of the reflector and the height and everything when we're going to take some pictures in a few minutes. Just remember, if you have all of this dimension in your head and you have a good starting point. They just help you to get your base starting. You, of course, you can break the rules and do whatever you want, after you can master a little bit of this, the basic technique of lighting placement, and you should be free to play around with everything else. But this, if it should be your to-go light for like at the beginning of the shoot, and after that you have time to play around and try to be more diverse and try to be more creative. Now the other element we need to add to the recipe is the proper distance for camera to subject. The best distance it is at least 7 feet. If you can have 8 to 10 feet from your subject, it is even better. Because perspective is not about the lens focal length. It is more related with the subject distance to your camera. And a focal length is more about the field of view, but the perspective is where your camera sits compared with your subject. We can talk about it in another video, but if you can keep your camera 7, 8 or 10 feet away from your subject, you're going to have the best perspective. Also, it's not going to make a difference if I use an 85 or a 35 millimeter lens. The field of view will be different, but the perspective will stay the same. Now let's put it all together. I want to do a black on black portrait, black close against the black backdrop, to show how important it is to achieve separation between your subject and the background while using this position guidelines we already talked about. Many refers to this separation that you make your subject pop, and for somebody starting out it's very hard to understand what that means. When you use contrast, lighting and color to separate the elements in your pictures, you can increase the apparent depth and give your picture a little bit of more 3D look. We're gonna start this photo shoot using the principles we already talked about, the distances, the height and everything else. We have Leo with us today, and we're gonna set up our softbox at the proper distance. We're gonna have it at 33 to 36 inches from his face. The center of my softbox is oriented that the light shooting straight through are gonna be like a foot in front of him. So I wanna feather the light to have a nicer light spill on his face. And the lower third of the softbox is below his eye level. And also I start with the box like 45 degrees from his face for a classic Rembrandt position. We'll take some portraits without the reflector. I'm gonna move the reflector out of the way. My aperture is 3.2, ISO 200, shutter speed 1/200 of a second. My speed light with two-layer diffusion on my softbox is at 16 and 7/10 power. Is the Godox V1 Pro. It works really good at on this setup. And we're gonna take a couple of pictures to see what kind of look we get without the reflector. I really like the exposure, I like the look. If you wanna increase the triangle, the famous Rembrandt triangle of light you get on the farther cheek, you can move the light a little bit back or a little to increase the size, or if you want to open up a little bit the shadow side, you can move the light a little bit more in front of him. In order to open up the shadows a little bit, I'm gonna bring in the reflector and I'm gonna position it close to him. The whole secret here is to have the reflector at the same height as your softbox, position it in front of your subject. So the further edge of my reflector is the same as my softbox. They are in front of him. If I want to decrease the light spilling in his face, the light reflecting on the shadow side of the face, I will not move the reflector away. I will just gonna bring it towards my camera a little bit in the front This way I still keep the light bouncing in front of him, and I can adjust how much light we're gonna reflect back on the shadow side, and kind of have control the contrast I can get in the picture. As you saw on this photo shoot, you can get very nice portraits following these rules. They never fail. It's very easy to follow. There are a couple of measurements you have to keep in your mind. The hardest part is to get the right exposure. If you don't know how to do it, I told you guys, please comment below. I'm going to do a tutorial how to determine your proper exposure in your camera without the handheld meter. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please check out my channel for more lighting tutorials and gear reviews. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.